Right, lads.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Full-on, your Fulham-centric football podcast. I'm your host, Ash Woolford. Joining me today for our Leeds review are both the Jacks. AJ, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, not too shabby.
Yeah, and Mozza, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, much like our position in the table, happy to be where I am.
We're going to cover, obviously, the Leeds review. Not a lot really happened in the game, so there's not loads to talk about. I think what it does do is open up a lot of conversations around the squad and the transfer window that obviously comes to an end in a week and a bit's time. And we'll probably cover a bit of that. And then tomorrow morning, we'll have our Brighton preview out where we can probably be a bit more positive towards the squad because we know we have our AFCON boys back and a couple of boys back from injury. So we'll just try and cover the Leeds one quickly and then talk about what we need to talk about. AJ, I'll come to you, mate. Same question I always start all of these review shows in. The squad that was picked in this game, the formation that was played, looked a bit disjointed, but how did you feel seeing it, mate?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure where it came from, to be honest. It was all a bit random, especially considering the consistency we've had in our previous fixtures and how well that's done us. It's just like he just threw the dice to see what would come up and then just played off of it. It was so strange. Like Harry Wilson in the 10 is weird in itself because he's not played for us a lot in the 10. Sure, he's done it for Wales, but he doesn't do it a lot for us. But if you want to do that, that's fine, but you need to stick with more traditional wingers to allow Wilson to actually thrive in that 10 and swap with them at any given time. But then to put Emil Smith Rowe, who has no pace and isn't a very direct player, out on the left wing and ask him to stay there the entire game just completely made me lose my mind, especially when you got Ryan Sessegnon out at right wing, which, yes, we've seen him do well out there, but he's a natural left winger. So either put Emil Smith Rowe on his right foot and allow him the ability to cross early so that he doesn't have to rely on getting in behind the defence and put Sessegnon on the left, or just stick with Emil Smith Rowe in the middle and let Sessegnon and Wilson swap between themselves as much as you want to. Or, God forbid, use Kevin. Like, we've got a natural number 10. We've got two natural number 10s because King was back from injury. Well, ish. And yet you play Wilson, who isn't our natural number 10, in the 10 and throw our natural number 10 out a left wing. And then you revert back to the double pivot at midfield, which we've all said does not work. It makes no sense to me. The entire midfield up was just a shambles, and it would have been fine if it was those five players, but go and be fluid and cover each other's positions and go and rotate. But that's not Marco Silva. Marco Silva is rigidity, structure. Make sure you stay where you're supposed to stay. Make sure you do what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it, which does not work with players like Emil Smith Rowe at left wing when he's had such great performances in the 8 and the 10 recently.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I think it looked very, very disjointed. I think that reverting back to that double pivot frustrates so many people because it really didn't work. And we have to be honest, Fulham were turgid. We were so bad. And there's many things that we can point at that too in this game. You know, we have to look at the last 6, 7 games and say, look, the squad have done amazingly considering it's so depleted, it's so small. We've had so many injuries, and the AFCON boys being gone. We've done really well to have the record we've had over Christmas and into the new year, and it was bound to come to an end. But the other half of me goes, Leeds was sort of there for the taking a bit. Leeds weren't that impressive, you know. Yes, they had more poor in the middle of the pitch. I thought defensively we but we offered nothing going forward, and we were lost everything in midfield. and probably having 5 players out of position effectively doesn't help that cause. And I think you're right. I think Emma Smith Rowe, who's played, having Harry Wilson step in when he's doing so well out on the right wing makes no sense. So it was a really frustrating, and offensively, we just didn't really offer anything. And very much like the game at Craven Cottage against Leeds, where Leeds get a 1-0 win in this one. Arguably, yes, they had more possession, but they didn't really offer much more than us going forward. If anything, they just managed to take the chance that they created. And, after the game at Craven Cottage, you can't really bemoan Leeds winning that game because we got away with murder at Craven Cottage, getting the 3 points that we did. It is what it is. Mozza, it's really frustrating. It's really frustrating. But we have to look at some positives. We know that the squad's really small at the moment. The 3 guys coming back from AFCON this week. Josh King, hopefully a bit more sharper after coming back last week. But, he was always earmarked to be the Brighton game, to be his game back. Anyway, we should be looking up going forward again. I don't want to just wipe our nose and go, look, we lost, we move on.
Yeah, sorry, mate. I didn't hear the end of the question there. My apologies. But yeah, gather what you were saying, like how we're looking forward or trying to look forward or be positive. Was it our first game of the season was Brighton away? I remember myself being there. Yeah, and we got that. Was it with the 1-1 draw? Help me out, AJ. Yeah, and yeah, with Muniz scoring. I mean, I think I don't feel disheartened. I'm not nervous. I mean, it's going to be a tough game. Looking forward to that. I think well, just trying to focus on the Leeds match, and not like tripping up and going into our Brighton preview already. It was the performance I sort of expected, and I'm going to say I don't know who the buck stopped with. I mean, it stops with obviously it's Marco Silva, maybe some of the players, but where our squad is so thin and stretched, I really was not expecting to be coming back with 3 points. I think my prediction was 1-0 beforehand, and yeah, like that last minute snatch and grab late winner goal for them. I'm not disheartened by it, and I don't think any of us fans should be. I don't think the players should be. I hope they're not. I think AJ, you just said some really relevant points, and I know you're quite impassioned there, and I'm on your side, mate. Like I'm singing, yeah, I'd sing from the same hymn sheet and all that. But yeah, with the lads coming back from AFCON, I think now we've got that. Well, clearly we've got that ability to have more squad rotation. Let's hope that Marco takes advantage of that. And also, what did you say at the beginning, Ash? With a week left of the transfer window, classic Fulham minute. Whoever we have, if anyone, if no one, I'm at the stage, to be honest. I was gonna say if we get someone in, yeah, that'd be great just to freshen things up. But I think there's at this stage there's not enough time for whatever players to gel come in. But yeah, happy to be proven wrong. So yeah, overall I wouldn't be too disheartened with this result. The players are clearly fatigued, but we just got to move on. And on to the next one. I think the next few fixtures we've got are on paper a bit more challenging.
Yeah, look, I think we spoke about it last week when we were talking about how the results in the league are maybe papered over the cracks in the squad, and the squad have done exceptionally well over Christmas and New Year's to get the results we've been getting, and to go 6 unbeaten in the league is always, a difficult thing to do in the Premier League. It doesn't matter what team you are; it's always difficult to do that. And to do that in a time where we've got arguably 3 of our best players gone because they're at a tournament. You've got, injuries all over the place. You've got one 34-year-old striker who is on his last legs but having to play, 75, 80 minutes every single week. It really has papered over. I think what the loss does, and I think subsequently, the amount of transfer news that's sort of come out of the club in the last couple of days has shown is that actually things aren't as rosy as maybe the results on paper have made them look. And the worrying thing is the way that our director of football, our head of recruitment, he's afar that he can often, he may not see those instant like those little things that are going on the pitch because he'll look at results and go, "We're getting results, so we don't really need to buy players. There's no panic." The good thing about that, I will add, is that because the results have been coming in, we haven't had to panic buy anybody at the start of January, right? Which is good because this means that some players have come available over this period that maybe weren't available at the beginning. You look at Oscar Bob, who we're heavily linked with this week, who would not have been available at the beginning of January. If we can get that over the line, that's a very good acquisition by Fulham. He's a very good young player, and that maybe changes. That maybe wouldn't have been even remotely possible if we had panic bought at the beginning of January because we needed players through the door. If the results were going so badly, then maybe we would have had to bought in 2 or 3 players already because we'd be below West Ham. Like that's how bad things were looking, right? And we have to be honest with. So I don't think there's really too much concern there. What worries me is there's a week left of a transfer window, and we haven't brought anybody in. We haven't had any major links other than Oscar Bob. And every time you hear Fulham being heavily linked with the player, 2 or 3 days later, there's just it's like a ghost. It's disappeared. Like it's one of those things that it is frustrating. AJ, we spoke about it a couple of weeks ago that we'll feel like we've got a couple of new signings in the door this week, having the AFCON boys back. Calvin Bassey being back is probably the only one who doesn't really change the way we've been playing because Cuenca's covered him really, really well. But having Chukwueze available to come back on, change games because the performance he was putting in before he left is massive. And having Iwobi back, who we know how much Marco loves, but quite frankly, has been superb playing in the middle of the pitch for us this season. They are good. They are massive having those players back, right? So when you look at it now and you look at the transfer window, should we be panicking that no one's come in? Is it just me who seems to be quite calm on it? Or, should we be happy with what we have or really worrying that no one's come in yet?
Well, the links to Adama Traore going out means that Oscar Bob is a brilliant replacement for a player that we saw on the fringe of our team anyway. And that's an exceptional bit of business. Yeah, there's probably a 30 million difference in the price between the two of them. But to get a little bit of money for Adama and replace him with Oscar Bob means that we're not putting square peg in a round hole and hoping it fits. We've got a like for like replacement, so to speak. Much different style of player, but a new winger to replace a winger walking out of the door. Then you talk about the AFCON boys coming in, and that's valid. It's one of those, funnily enough, we wouldn't have missed Bassi as much going into AFCON as we thought, as we did. Well, no, we didn't, but we wouldn't have missed him much based on his form. Sorry, before AFCON, but because of his form during AFCON, he could be coming in with a hell of a lot of confidence. And if we see the Bassi from last season, as much as it's harsh on Cuenca, he will be dropped. Whereas Chukwueze was going into AFCON with an absolute bucket of confidence because of how well he was doing for us. Unfortunately, he's barely played at AFCON and then been scapegoated for them being knocked out. So his mentality and his confidence could be at an all-time low, which isn't what we need from a star player returning to us. As for Iwobi's Iwobi. He left great, he came back great, just don't put him out wide and we'll be fine. As for other signings, we've had links. Pepe, striker, okay, understand it. Oscar Bob, okay, departing winger, I understand it. Wilson potentially on the move in the summer. It's a potential good bit of business. Where's the midfielders? Where are they? We need a defensive midfielder / box-to-box midfielder. Someone that can either do both roles or one of each. We need those positions. Fullbacks, fine. We can look at new fullbacks in the summer. Centre backs, fine. We've got plenty of cover. Goalkeepers, we're okay, especially now we've got another third goalkeeper coming back, being from a loan recall. I don't understand what we're doing about the central defensive midfield role.
Yeah, there's not really been loads, has there, in terms of sort of links of players and stuff like that, which is slightly concerning. I think that when you look at some of the players that we have been linked with, I've seen a few links in the last couple of days for Fulham. You know, we're linked with Hayden Hackney again, which isn't a player that any of us are really too upset about seeing. I love Hayden. I think Hayden Hackney's great. Although, Premier League is a big step up for someone his age. He'd be a signing that you'd be looking at maybe for next year, the year after. We've been linked with a few other players around Europe to come in who are midfielders. We've been linked with is it Kendry Paz from Chelsea to come in on loan? Who, yeah, maybe no. Is it Sergi Atamir from Spain to come over? These are all players that we've been linked with, but we don't. There's been no sort of serious links coming in. For me, the most important position for us to cover at the moment is that central defensive midfield position, mainly because you can't rely on Lukic not to get game bans. And I'm not liking Lukic and Berger playing together. I've made my point on them many times before that I think both of those players look better when the other person's not on the pitch. I just think we're not progressive enough when they're both on the pitch. And maybe Iwobi being back will cover that and change that slightly because we know that he likes to. I think he's been brilliant playing in that other midfield position, covering the box to box this season, to the point where he is starting to get some actual eyes on him from outside of the football club. People realizing just how much of a good footballer Alex Iwobi is, and it's part of the reason why, even though we joke that Marco Silva can never drop Iwobi when he's in town, he always has to play. There's a reason for that. Like he's one of our most progressive players, and his link-up play is superb. So, it's a difficult one for me. It's nice that we've been linked with a couple of wingers, with Adama going out and Harry Wilson's contract situation being difficult. We have to admit that it's difficult. We have to be looking at these players coming in. So it's an interesting one. Look, lads, we'll know we're going to have so much to talk about in terms of transfers in the next couple of weeks, especially as we talk about the games coming up and what's going on. We'll end this one like we always do. We'll give a man in the match for the game on Saturday. It's a difficult one. I'm going to start with this one mainly just because, for me, there's only really one man of the match for me for Fulham from the game on Saturday, and that's Emil Smith Rowe. He was the only one who looked remotely like he was going to create anything going forward. No one else around him was creating anything. He had our one big chance, 35 yards, a bit of a difficult task when you're trying to make a snapshot. Other than that, we didn't really offer much. Weirdly, Harry Wilson had a really poor game, and I don't think that helps because you look at him as being the one when you need something creative to do anything. So for me, it would be Emma Smith Rowe. Mozza, how about yourself, mate? Any players that you think should be up there for man of the match?
I agree with you, mate. Yeah, I wonder if ESR thought he could do a bit of a Harrison Reed, but just a bit slightly of a closer distance. But yeah, I've got to agree with you there, mate. I wonder what with Wilson as well. I wonder if like it got in his head a bit because he was linked with Leeds, wasn't he, just before the start of the season? And Leeds fans are probably thrilled and fed on that, and maybe gave him some stick up at Ellen Road as well when he was playing. I don't know, but yeah, I'll have to agree with you and stick with what you're saying, mate. ESL.
Yeah. And AJ, how about yourself, mate? Who's your man of the match for the game on Saturday?
I will give my Fulham man of the match to Dominic Calvert-Lewin purely because he couldn't hit the target, and if he could, it would have been a lot worse of a game. No, joking aside, I'd probably give it to Anderson. He was consistent, wasn't brilliant, but consistent, and that's better than anyone else on the day.
Yeah, can't argue with it, to be fair with you. I think that weirdly, as much as we're moaning about the fact that Fulham didn't really create anything in the game defensively, I thought we were really solid. And it is as simple as that. Yeah, we're unlucky to lose 1-0. I think unlucky, realistically. We didn't really create anything. But, Leeds fans would be looking at that and going, if you remember the game at Craven Cottage, we got away with murder getting the 3 points. So both of us getting 3 points against each other this season, wipe our noses and say it is what it is, and we move on. Thanks very much for joining me on this one, lads. I say this one's come out on Thursday night, bit late. We apologise it's late for this week, but I'll openly admit it was my birthday and I didn't want to record on my birthday, so we delayed going into
21
this
at
one.
last.
Yeah, finally legal. So we'll be out again tomorrow morning with our Brighton preview, where we're hoping we can be a positive for the return of the AFCON boys and Fulham back at the Cottage. Thanks everyone who's joined us over the last couple of weeks. We appreciate we've been a bit disjointed recording wise, and episodes have come out late and been all over the place, but needs must really from us, and we have to admit that. But we're hoping to be back to normal again from this week, and hopefully we'll see you for that. So join us tomorrow morning for that Brighton preview. Not really much more to say, is there, other than thanks very much and come on, you Whites.